That was kind of a powerful presentation, and they showed it in schools all over the place, and there was a grant that actually paid for the presentation of that and putting it together. And it kind of leads to stereotyping, exactly what stereotyping is. And the cool little cartoon that's on the first slide here says, "Hey French toast, my brothers, you wouldn't believe all the lies I've heard about you," and it says, "Stupid American toast," because it's toast, get it?
Yeah,
French is the French because everybody, exactly. See, it's that stereotype. No, we don't like to do that stereotype. So as we go through this presentation and we think about different stereotypes, ultimately the bottom line up front with stereotypes is that it's an exaggerated belief associated with a category. And it can be a category of a whole bunch of people. Now, in the world of education today, our big stereotype is the now generation, the generation that's coming up right now, the students that we have. And they're unbelievably stereotyped as lazy, enabled, entitled. There's unbelievable stereotypes, and that puts a horrible wall up as educators. And we go through this all the time. And in all honesty, when we see young soldiers and they go through basic training, we see the same thing. As NCOs, it's one of the things that we have to personally do is make sure that we're squashing that stereotype the minute the new soldier comes in. I can't just look at Fuentes and think, oh my God, she's a new soldier, she's been entitled, she's been this, she's been that. I'm never going to be able to deal with her because I don't understand, not her ethnicity, but the generation that she's coming in. And those are stereotypes that I have to squash. So it's not only ethnicity I have to squash, the female stereotype that might go along with her, the ethnicity, but also the generation that she falls in. So there's an awful lot of stereotypes that you can categorize people in. So if we think about what stereotypes are, they can very commonly be very fixed, rigid ideas of what an individual is. They're associated with groups or categories of people not supported by any evidence, can be favorable or unfavorable in certain circumstances, can have an adverse effect, and they are driven very much by different motives that are out there for the people. So if we think of new soldiers that are coming in, and the first thing that we think about them is that they're entitled, in a lot of ways we think to ourselves, well, they didn't have it as hard as I had it. They didn't have it going through basic training the same way I had it. And as we think about this, we think about, is that driven by a motive? Is it supported by any evidence? I am associating that young soldier, that young individual, into a group or a category of people. They're new soldiers. And the new soldiers that are coming in, if I think every one of them is that way, I'm going to be overlooking a lot of obvious things about that soldier. What would I be overlooking if I categorized them that way?
Some of their good qualities.
Some of their good qualities. That's a good point. Absolutely. If I categorize Sorensen as being a new soldier and thinking that he's lazy, can't do this, can't do that, I may not even ask him to do certain things because I put him in that category. And I'm not even taking out any of his good qualities. Not that he has any, but maybe if he did. Let's just assume that he does.
That's all right. I'll remember that.
So some of the factors that support stereotypes are some of the socialization processes, books, and mass media. How does mass media affect stereotypes? I mean, it seems funny, doesn't it? Because we see this all the time. If we think of mass media and we think of, we're going to put people in a group here, but let's say we group the yodelers together. And every yodeler is crazy. Where are yodelers found? In the mountains, right? Because that's where they yodel. And they're usually of some sort of ethnicity, right? Swiss or white? So all white people yodel.
Probably.
Well, we can, probably. So we can associate based on mass media that when we see a yodeler, they have to be white, they have to be from the mountains. And that's what we're thinking because the mass media is pushing that idea on. Books can do the same thing. There can be thousands and thousands and thousands of books out there that tell us that all yodelers are white.
The new generation don't know what books are.
Oh, okay. Books are things, for those that don't know, you open them, there's paper in there?
Paper,
Okay.
words on.
And the socialization process fuels this. And when we think of the socialization process, we think of social media automatically. But the socialization process is the grouping of like people. Because like people have a tendency of grouping themselves together. A prime example of this is when I went through the EO training for this, and we sat down in a group. There was I don't know, it was like 38 of us or something in this group, and we sat in a big horseshoe, big horseshoe of tables, and the guy was in the middle. Great guy that taught the class, and he said, "Look around. Is there a socialization process happening in this room?" And as we looked around, there were all the different races imaginable. There were Caucasians, there were Hispanics, there were African Americans, there were some Vietnamese folks that were in there with us as well, and you saw the groups all sitting together. And it was by default that we did that. We had no idea we even were doing it. I just picked a damn seat. I'll be honest with you, I was like, oh, there's a seat in the back. I'm going to sit there. I had no idea what I was doing. But that's the process that we overlook. We don't even think about it. So for the next 5 days, they really kind of forced us into getting out of that socialization process. Sit by somebody you wouldn't normally sit by. And I have a tendency of doing that now. Because I get to meet more people I might not have met. I might not have ever met Mr. Hunt or Mr. Garcia. Not that that's a good thing we ever met, but I might not have ever met him. And Anthony, I know I wouldn't have met. Because. But there's that. So, but what we have to also take into consideration are the interrelationships of perceptions to stereotypes. And the interrelationship to the perception of the stereotype is the individual here, and let's just call this person Mr. Jackson. And when he looks at this individual, there's two very important things that are happening automatically when he starts stereotyping the individual. He's going to go based on the experience of that individual. So, when he sees this bald guy standing out there minding his own stinking business, scratching his head,
Call that guy Sean Combs.
Look like George Costanza.
it does look kind of like George Costanza. Just skinnier. So, he's going to think automatically, well, look, he's a bald guy, he's scratching his head, he must be lost. And all bald guys are stupid. Except for one. So it's that perception based on his experience. But also with that is going to come his perception. So his perception based on his experience is going to automatically key, if he lets it, automatically key on what he thinks is true. And also with that perception, he's going to throw in that stereotype. So based on what I know about this person, I'm going to stereotype him as a middle-class white guy with no hair that is lost. Automatically. And they're very much intertwined. That perception and that stereotype is very much intertwined. And we just don't take that for a second. If we meet an individual, automatically, by default, we start stereotyping. We don't even know that we're doing it. It happens. We start stereotyping. Now, how we stereotype and how we get past those stereotypes of individuals is extremely important. And that has to happen. So, based on your first impressions, if I showed you two different pictures of two individuals, and let's just look at them for a second. There are two different ethnicities. True statement, right? They almost look like, I don't know if you can tell, but do they look American?
I don't know. Guy on the left looks like he got to take a shit.
He looks constipated, that is true.
Looks like he owned slaves.
So we got this guy over here, we got this guy over here. Two totally different people. So the guy on the top actually is Louis Vuitton. Louis Vuitton clothing wear. You've never heard of Louis Vuitton clothing wear and purses and all that other stuff? That's Louis Vuitton. Louis Vuitton founded the Louis Vuitton fashion house in 1854. So he's been around a long time. He's probably not with us anymore. However, his company is worth $28 billion. Doesn't look like a $28 billion guy, but that's how it all started. This gentleman, I can't say his name, founded fiber optics. He created the fiber optic communication. So it can be said that without this individual, we wouldn't have the internet as we see it today. And those are just perceptions. We look at this guy and we look at him, and he almost looks like he's out in a cactus field somewhere. And it's a perception we automatically get. Louis Vuitton did not own slaves, but see, you associated that. No, don't do it, because I looked it up. So now we have these two individuals. This guy, first one
You
guy.
have to take it to be wrong, can you?
So, as we look at these two pictures, the guy on the left seems like, first of all, does he look educated?
Yes.
Okay. He looks like he's fairly well dressed.
Also looks like a freaking serial killer.
Well,
Which means he's probably a nice guy. Because they have good charisma.
you never know. Sometimes they have good charisma. The guy here at the bottom right just looks like a happy fella.
Or
He
it's
looks
big
like a
brain.
music writer.
Or, what's that?
Like a music writer.
Like he
Or
might
artist.
be creative
Yeah.
or artist of some sort.
Like he's not wearing
Like the
pants.
drugs helped him do it.
Like the drugs maybe helped him do it. So the top left picture is Dr. Holly Harvey Crittman. He was an American homeopath. He's convicted of killing his wife. Huh? And this is Mears Cunningham. He's an American modern dancer. So he was very creative teacher. Most remembered as an innovative and influential choreographer. So wasn't necessarily a drawing type artist, but the whole theme behind this is that we understand that our perception of the individual, the minute that we look at them, we automatically start trying to figure that individual out. And the downside to it is there are a lot of consequences that come along with stereotyping. So if we think of some of the consequences that go along with stereotyping and the dangers, it influences our perception on others. It affects our behaviors in a lot of ways. It affects the behaviors of the stereotype group, and it sets up what a confirmation bias is. We've talked about confirmation bias before. I know we might not remember this, but what a confirmation bias is very much, if I have a bias on a group of individuals, either positive or negative, a stereotype in a lot of ways can reinforce that bias. Like if I hate farmers, we'll throw farmers out there. If I hate farmers, all farmers shouldn't be trusted.
Why? Is it because we can use tax write-offs?
No, because you something about stealing from the government. But I automatically put that assumption out there, and you hear some of these stories of, guys or farmers not paying taxes, or farmers not doing this, and farmers not doing that. It fuels that confirmation bias. Now, is that true about all farmers? No, it isn't. And it's crazy to think that. However, some people do definitely get stuck automatically in that bias. And that bias doesn't go away. So it's extremely important that we're not just fixating completely on the stereotype or our perception on that individual. And it will affect our behavior. Our behavior is extremely important. And if you think about it, when we went through that MRT class, what's the one thing that we can control? All the MRT classes that we talk about, we control one thing, and that's our behavior. Not the behavior of others, but our thought control and our behaviors. So by being able to control our stereotype behaviors and how we categorize individuals will help affect that behavior and that perception and influence on others. So here are some strategies to correct inaccurate perceptions. Acceptance of differences in people. Are all people the same?
No.
Absolutely not. They're not the same. I mean, who the hell would want more than one hero? Get it? You're my hero. Get it? Not more than one hero. So, accept that people are individuals. They are that way. Now, here's a little trick that I like to play, and I trick myself into this, believe it or not. I trick myself into thinking if I don't spend the energy on people wanting me to stereotype them, I've saved energy to do other positive things. It's just wasting too much energy. So I, in a lot of ways, accept the individual for who they are, and then adapt myself to work with that individual, positive or negative. Now, if I can influence them into the way I'm thinking, that's perfectly fine, but that doesn't always work.